Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. We have so many fantastic things to talk about the fintech world this week, but Tom and Francis, joining me as ever, how are you guys doing today?
Very good, thank you. It's been another good week, quite an exciting, busy week. We've had lots of work on the newspaper. We've got some great stories to go through today.
Amazing stuff. And Francis, how about you?
Pretty much the same, to be honest. Happy to be here again talking fintech with you guys. And yeah, I think we've got some good stories lined up. Should be good.
Speaking of good stories, what are you guys going to be talking about today? Francis, what's your article?
So this week I'm going to be talking about how credit card spend is up £100 in September 2023 when compared to 2 years ago, and sort of discuss the future of credit cards.
Fantastic stuff. And Tom, how about you?
I am going to be talking about some of the recent big news in the crypto world.
Great stuff. And I'm going to be talking about diversity in the boardroom, specifically when we're talking about age. So Tom, I'm going to let you go first because I feel like your story is pretty big topical news right now. So why don't you kick us off?
It is. The crypto world is always giving us a lot of entertainment. I feel like it has throughout the year. So basically, last week we have seen some very big developments in the world of crypto. And that came through the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, charged the popular crypto trading platform Kraken as an unregistered securities exchange, broker, dealer, and clearing agency. And then just, I think 1 day later, the CEO of Binance, Changpeng Zhao, pleaded guilty to money laundering charges and resigned from his position at the exchange. Now, I feel like throughout the year on this podcast, we've spoken a lot about big developments in the crypto world. And the point that we often come back to is how this really impacts the reputation of the crypto industry. And this really took me by surprise, I guess, because when a big player like Binance is forced to pay they had to pay a $4.3 billion settlement for its failings regarding anti-money laundering. And Changpeng Zhao, who is a very popular figure in the crypto world, and its CEO, was also hit by a $50 million fine. And I just thought, this is something, Binance are one of the largest players when it comes to crypto. And once again, it came back to, well, I wonder how the world is going to take notice of this. So rather than debate how we think this is going to impact people's perception of crypto, because I feel like we've done that a lot in the past, I really wanted to ask both of you what you actually personally think of crypto yourselves. Do you trust it or not? So, Polly, I'll come to you first. Do you like or loathe crypto, and would you trust it enough to potentially make future crypto investments in the future, or have you seen enough to make you want to avoid it?
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I am really much leaning towards the avoid. I mean, I have never really been a crypto person, which is probably quite interesting considering the job that I have in the industry that I'm in. And maybe you'd kind of expect me to be a bit more keen on crypto. But I think the problem is I don't really understand it. And I've never understood it. Again, even with the job that I have never understood crypto and how it works and how you're supposed to do it. And I think, yeah, for me, hearing news like this, and all the different things that are happening in the space just really cement that thought in my head of, yeah, crypto's not for you. I think it's too much to try and wade into, and I know I'm sure there are loads of places online where I could go to find more information and learn more, and there's loads of different apps and fintechs and other places where that are fully designed to help you get into crypto in a way that makes sense. But for me, I just really don't want to, and I've never wanted to, even before I kind of got into the fintech industry. It's just never been a big desire for me, and just hearing news like this just kind of makes me go, yeah, I'm making the right choice, because it doesn't sound great, like money laundering, different sanctions, regulations not being followed, all of this stuff, that doesn't sound like an industry that you want to trust your money with. And I know I know crypto is like volatile, and I know that like the risky investment is like the whole appeal of cryptocurrency. I get that, but for me, it's too much of a risk. Like, you hear so many horror stories of people who have like lost their savings to crypto, or like even just sort of they've invested a bunch of money into crypto and have like millions and millions of Bitcoin, but they can't access it because they've forgotten their password or something like that. Even like stories like that just make me go, clearly people need to think this through a little bit more. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I'm not into it. I'm just really not into crypto, and I don't think I ever will be. And I don't know if anything could ever happen to make me actually go, yeah, I'll give crypto a go. I can't think of anything that would sort of placate my fears. Fears maybe is a strong word, but like my concerns. I'm not into it.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point in the fact that one of the reason so many people get into it in the first place is the volatility, and it's like, oh, get rich quick almost. And I mean, I was guilty for that during lockdown. I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't have a lot else to spend my money on at the moment. Seeing how well crypto was doing at the time, I was like, let me just put a little bit into that. And you see it, saw it rise up really quickly and go, wow, I'm making so much money here. And then inevitably saw it all crash down pretty soon after. And yeah, I think for me, it's seeing all this volatility, not only in the value of different crypto assets, but also just in the world of crypto, the different companies, the different regulations, as you said. I think it makes it makes me very wary as well. And while I have quite a lot of crypto just sitting there now, not worth anything, but it's all just sat there. And I think mentally, I've gone, you know what, that's enough now. We'll see how that does. But I think it's very easy with so much volatility going on to take a step back away from it. And I think it was interesting because the article that I'm referencing was sort of looking into the industry reaction, and there was very much a split between people saying this is just another hurdle for the crypto industry to, jump over. It's going to be fine again. It will, recover from this. And then other people saying this is, surely enough now. We've seen that the crypto industry is never going to settle down. So I thought it was interesting that even when you reach out to the experts, no one can really agree on what this means for the future of crypto. But I know, Francis, you also have been guilty of a little crypto investment in the past. So I want to get your take, especially on what do you think this means for the future of crypto?
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I think you heard all about how there was this get rich quick type of thing. I put some money in and I was like, oh, look, it's gone up. And then 3 days later, it wasn't even worth what I'd originally put in. But I think the news that sort of has come recently from Binance, I don't think it's really going to be that detrimental to crypto. Almost because I feel like there's never been a time where crypto hasn't been in the firing line with the regulators, be that in the US or UK or wherever you may be. I think crypto seems to always be sort of it's a very tense subject, I think, in terms of compliance. And because of that, I feel like people in the industry have sort of grown used to it. And when the news broke about the Binance CEO being removed, it kind of just it felt like it was falling on deaf ears. It almost was like it doesn't really mean anything. It's just another thing that's happened in the crypto industry, another time that someone has, you know, sort of shown that, oh, it's not as trustworthy as it can be. But then I think on the flip side, and I'm not going to say it's playing devil's advocate because it's something that I do truly agree with, is that there are a lot of good use cases of crypto, especially in emerging markets. And I think when you talk about sort of cross-border payments or trying to send money back home to other places, and you think about how stable coins are a way to ensure that people aren't losing ridiculous amounts of money when they're working hard to send money back to their families. And I think in that regard, you really have to sort of say that, yeah, there are a lot of bad sides to cryptocurrencies, and this definitely doesn't help with that image. But I think when you think about the use cases and how a majority of people can use it, I mean, when after the news, I looked up to see how Binance's coin was doing, and I mean, it's gone up. Despite this news, Binance coin has still gone up in value, and it just makes me think that there's two ways to look at it. Either it's a hype train, and that everyone still really likes it, so this doesn't really matter at all. But then if everyone starts to suddenly think, oh, I'm not sure I like this, does it all crash and burn? Possibly, very possibly. But I don't know. I think there are just enough good use cases that you can think to yourself, I don't know, that, crypto is good. And that I think it definitely has its place.
Yeah, I think personally as well, being someone that doesn't actually need crypto in my daily life, or I don't think, oh, I need crypto to solve this problem, send the money cross borders or anything. I think it's very easy to forget actually that those use cases do exist, and it's certainly a good argument for the future of the crypto industry, and meaning that it can still continue to help people beyond just being somewhere for people to invest their money. So yeah, it's an interesting point. But no, it's good to hear that. But I guess we'll move on to one of your two articles. Do we have any volunteers?
Yeah, go on then. I'll go next. As we're coming up to December now, as when this goes live, it will be December. I think it's quite interesting to see with Christmas spend coming up and with Black Friday just having gone by, and with the Boxing Day deals that are going to come. It's always interesting to see how people are spending their money. And recent research from FICO, the analytics software company, revealed that credit card spend has gone up £100 only by September, by the way, of 2023 when compared to 2 years ago. So the research comes from client reports generated by the FICO Triad Customer Management Solution, and it found that in September 2023, credit card spend was on average £805, which was £30 more than in September 2022, and almost £100 more than in September 2021. So in the past 2 years, December's credit card spend has been £50 more than September's figures. And if this year and next year follow the same trend, consumers could be spending around £900 using credit cards in December 2024 on average. Lenders should be wary, however, the article points out, because there has been a year-on-year growth of 9.3%, 10.7%, and 17.9% in the percentage of accounts missing 1, 2, and 3 payments respectively. So when looking at singular payments missed, September 2023 was a stark increase compared to August of the same year, as there was a 13.5% increase in missed payments. So it's something to keep an eye out, and something that lenders should be aware of going into, the crazy December months. But I think one of the big things that I wanted to talk about with you guys is we've really seen an emergence of new payment technologies this year, especially with AI and artificial intelligence really exploding onto the scene. And we've heard loads about how it's going to impact the future, and especially in the next coming years, what's really going to happen. I was curious to see if you guys thought that if there were any other technologies, or it could just be AI, that would really impact how much people are using credit cards in December. Because I think we can all agree, due to Christmas, there's always going to be more spending going on, and with inflation and different things going on in the economy, prices are going to continue to go up. But is the emergence of AI or any other technology going to really replace credit cards, or do you think it's the old reliable and that everyone's going to keep coming back to it? Tom, I'll go to you first.
I have to say, I don't know if the sort of the world of AI payments, I'm not fully, I guess, up to speed with what exactly the use cases or exactly the technology that's going to come in that could replace credit cards, if that makes sense. I think I could definitely see the likes of buy now, pay later coming in and having a big impact on whether people use credit cards as much, especially I think every year it seems to be growing. And in many respects, it's like a direct competitor in the case of you can spend the money through buy now, pay later, pay in installments, later on. It's not an immediate worry. Um, so, yeah, I don't know, honestly. I think in the short term, I think credit cards are going to be continue to grow, and spending on credit cards will honestly continue to grow, as prices go up as well. But I think more and more people, at least our generation, are still looking to apply for credit cards. They see the benefits. And I know we were talking recently about, the bettering your credit score when it comes to credit cards. And that's obviously a big reason that people have them. So for the time being, I don't think there's anything that's going to come in to replace it. Perhaps people will use them less when we get more banks using sort of open banking and open finance to check if you're eligible for certain loans and things, rather than the sort of dated credit score infrastructure that we use now. So I wonder if once that credit score appeal about credit cards is gone, or is lessened at least, whether people might then go, okay, we don't need to use credit cards anymore. I'd rather use buy now, pay later, or any AI forms of payment. So I think it'll be interesting. I think for the short term, credit cards will stay top of the pack, and it'll be interesting to see, in the few years in the future, whether that will change due to new technology.
Before I give my opinion on that, I think that's really interesting you've said that, but I just want to see, Polly, what do you think?
So I agree with like everything that Thomas just said. I think he has answered the question better than I could have possibly tried to answer it, but I will bash out something anyway. I think the only thing that will overtake credit cards is other lines of credit, and this could be in like a whole host of different ways. But buy now, pay later, I think particularly is one of the places where we're going to see a lot of uptake. Because I mean, at the moment, obviously being Christmas, I'm getting buy now, pay later advertised to me like everywhere, like scrolling on TikTok or like on like social media and other places like that. But like all loads of different buy now, pay later companies are like advertising to me being like, pay for Christmas easier, blah blah blah, or like get your best Christmas gifts. So I think that's definitely going to see a push. I think sometimes a credit card can feel like a scary thing if you're not like used to using one, or maybe you've been told by your parents, never get a credit card because it just leads to debt. And so there can be a little bit of an aversion to getting a credit card, even though lines of credit are open in every part of your life and it's just another similar thing of credit. But when it comes to buy now pay later, I think they just feel a lot less scary and a lot less dangerous in a lot of ways, even though of course we know that they have their own sort of issues as well as their own strengths as well. And I think there'll be other ways as well, like like retail store cards, even though they are technically a credit card. I think those will get a huge rise as well, because those are always pushed on you whenever you make a purchase at like a big chain that has one. I think you're always asked, do you want to open a store card? And yeah, so I think whether there's some like really cool technology out there that I don't know about yet, or that I can not see, but just in general, I think the only thing that's going to replace a credit card is going to be other lines of credit, whatever they might be.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to, again, I do definitely agree with you, Polly, but the reason I wanted to sort of get both of your viewpoints first is because I think it's kind of what we've all agreed here, is that credit history is such an important factor in the financial ecosystem right now, sort of on a personal basis at least. And I think without it, you're going to struggle to sort of get loans, to sort of get a house, to do whatever you need to do. It's always going to be very difficult without a good credit history. And it's kind of like you said, Tom, unless there's something that can really replace this, I don't necessarily want to call it archaic, but let's say dated method of sort of testing eligibility for stuff, for loans specifically, I don't think we're going to see credit cards replaced. So I think it is very possible that we do see that £900 spend in December 2024. However, it is very possible that if there is some sort of technology that comes in, I mean, open banking and open finance are great examples that can really alleviate the stress of having good credit history. I mean, if there's an alternative way to sort of show that, you're responsible with your payments, then perhaps we will see them sort of fall to the wayside. But yeah, I think the importance of having a good credit score, I think, is what's going to keep them relevant. But yeah, we'll go to our final article of the day. Polly, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis. So, yeah, moving away from credit cards and payments and all that sort of lovely stuff, the article I wanted to talk about today is all kind of about diversity, but not in the way that perhaps we talk about it traditionally. I think when we talk about diversity a lot, both, I mean, in the fintech industry, but just like generally in the world, we kind of focus on gender. And while gender diversity is like a really important factor here, I think it's also important to kind of talk about age as something that we need to be thinking about in terms of diversity as well. So there's an article here on our website from Fiona Hawthorne, the CEO of WB Directors, the Women on Boards Network, talking about the importance of younger voices in the boardroom, essentially, and how very few boards of directors hear from young people. and as the majority of them are in their mid to late 50s, despite young people taking up a large proportion of their customer base. And I just thought this was a really interesting idea because it's kind of something that I explored very briefly back in October for our Women in Fintech series, this idea of diversity beyond gender. And as well back in, when was Money 2020 in Amsterdam? Was that June, May? Whenever that was, on a panel I did with Joanne Dewar and a few other people, again, about diversity in fintech and the importance of looking at that beyond the gender scope. And so I just thought it'd be really interesting to kind of bring it to the table today and kind of see what you guys thought of it. Because obviously, young people are very much the future, which sounds so cliche to say. It's kind of thing you kind of expect people to say, in the classroom when you're talking about careers or something like that. But I think the idea of fintech and financial companies needing to look at the younger lens is a really interesting one, because I do think a lot of fintechs are skewing quite younger. Like there's a lot of very young CEOs of startups, and just young members of startup workforces in general. But I thought it was quite interesting, especially because of the future being so digital, and obviously young people are like more likely to try new technologies and try new things and just generally bring a lot of different sort of energy and new ideas and innovations to a boardroom, to a business. I think sometimes when you're, maybe these older boards, older CEOs, maybe they have like a particular way of doing things, and that's absolutely fine. But it's hard to kind of generate new ideas and new innovation when you're just doing things exactly the same way. So yeah, I wanted to just ask you guys what you thought. Do you think we need to start looking, younger, whether that's getting people in the C-suite who are younger than 50, or is it a case of that we can keep the boardrooms as they are, but they just need to kind of get more input from younger people, whether that's their younger consumers or like younger members of staff? What do you guys think? Tom, I will ask you first.
I think it's a really interesting question, actually. I personally think I don't see any negative to having younger people in the boardroom, whether that be, given a senior role, as a much younger person, or whether it just means more input. Either way, I don't think they can be negative. I think the one thing that goes against younger people generally in that respect is, experience. Obviously, someone who's been in the industry for 30, 40 years has a lot more experience when they've got more experience in the industry than you have lived. And that's always interesting. But I think it's very easy to see sometimes that there is that older demographic who, while they have this experience, maybe they're less involved in like emerging technologies. I think something I read in the article is younger people are much more likely to engage with emerging technologies and trial new technologies out. Things like that can be, it's just a different attitude because of a different age and I guess a different level of experience, a different environment that they're living in day to day. So, yeah, I think diversity in every respect, the more diversity you can get in the boardroom, it doesn't seem like every report I've ever seen suggests that every type of diversity and the more diverse boardroom is, the more success that it's going to see. And I guess it's just because everyone has different inputs depending on, their lifestyle, their age, their experience. And if you can combine all that, you're going to get the best possible result. So yeah, I really think it can only be a good thing. And yeah, I hopefully we see more and more of that type of diversity and that every type of diversity continuing on in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on the money there with the idea of experience. And I think that is the one thing sort of holding us back to going fully, young people in the boardroom. But I think, yeah, having that blend of both experience and new ideas and new thinking, I think is going to be the perfect way to go. But Francis, what do you think about this?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm very much sort of in the same boat as you guys, and I think it's very easy to get stuck in the old ways, especially when there's been historical success doing something one way. I think it can be very risky for a business to think, all right, well, we're going to sort of just abandon that and completely uproot everything that we've done. But I think it's essential that you need younger voices, especially if you're looking to target a younger audience. I feel like it's very easy for different age groups to sort of get out of touch with one another, be that intentional or not. Sometimes people from an older demographic are making an extra effort to sort of be more attuned to what younger people like and dislike and, you know, what the trends are. But nonetheless, I think it's always going to be easier to have sort of a relatable voice, at least. And I think it works in both ways, because you know how you asked, Polly, you said, is it that you need to have someone younger to, or do boards just need to open their ears to the younger members of their teams? But I think it's like that saying that I always bring it up because I think it's so useful. It's such a good analogy, but it's, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I mean, they can have all the ideas that they want, but if there's nothing that's gonna, or no one that they think they can approach to talk to, then they're not going to say it. Whereas I think if you have someone who it's kind of similar to the mentors that we always talk about in women in fintech, right? I mean, it's much easier for people, just anyone really, to talk to someone else if they sort of have something that they can relate with. And I think that when you sort of look at sort of boards of directors that sort of just made up of just the older generation, it sort of makes you think, oh, they're just not going to understand necessarily, or if I pitch my idea, it might not go down well. Whereas I think, as you guys mentioned, younger people tend to be more open to the idea of emerging technologies, and that may be a stereotype, and it probably is, but there are some stats to back it up. So I don't know. I think it is definitely something that needs to see some change, and I think it would be good to ultimately have more diversity in every sense of the word in boardrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what you've said there. And I think the idea of diversity, all-encompassing diversity, I think is something that we should definitely explore more on the podcast. I think it's a really interesting topic that we can all get into. But anyway, that does bring us to the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much, guys, for bringing your articles to the table. If you want to hear any more about anything we've talked about today, head on over to the fintechtimes.com, where you can read plenty more news and insights over there. Very quickly, though, we will move on to what I learned this week. So each week, we learn so much new and interesting information being on the Fintech Times editorial team that we are just learning something new all the time. So we thought it'd be fun to share that with our listeners. So, Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week, I learned that Habito, the digital mortgage broker, has joined forces with AI-driven prop tech startup PropFlow to launch a new tool for mortgage intermediary sector, Greenval, to help homeowners make their properties more energy efficient and environmentally friendly. And as COP28 has started today, or yesterday, I should say, as of recording, I thought it was really appropriate and quite interesting to see.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, I learned that during the current cost of living crisis, that 18% of pensioners in the UK are set to find themselves on the poverty line due to not having enough money in their pension funds. And that's according to Senior Capital, the later life lending specialist.
Amazing. And what I learned this week is that UK businesses are heading back to the office and spending more on products related to their office space from Paleo, the spend management platform. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. It has been a pleasure, as always, to talk about fintech with you. And I'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
See you guys then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using hashtag TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.